Our featured speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, Nicola Madden-Greig, OD.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning, Prime Minister. It's a pleasure to be here. I should say to be back in St. Lucia. This holds a very special place in my memory. That gentleman that I got married to actually came and honeymooned here in St. Lucia at this very same hotel. So it's a big welcome home. And I've been here many times. Firstly, let me thank your CEO and President, Narani and Paul, for inviting me here today to give this address under the theme, Building Forward Better Together. I'd like to explore a bit where we are coming from as a region and how the pandemic has changed our trajectory and how public-private sector partnership, we must cement a path forward to not only fully revive tourism, but also to make it thrive. Before I get into my presentation, I want to quickly go through a little bit about the CHTA. And we have heard CHTA many times, and the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association is the voice of tourism for the Caribbean. And I just want to tell you a little bit about, okay, what's happening there? No. Technology this morning is not helping us at all. All right, we got this fixed. There we go. Okay, thank you. I think it's his fault. We're good. All right, so CHTA, as you see, we have very strong organizational objectives, and we have a great team from the SLHTA who have worked with us through the last 2 years. During the pandemic, partnership and collaboration has been key with our national hotel associations, of which we have over 32. So we look at diversity and growing our revenue, of course, and building our membership. But of course, CHTA continues to develop activities that must help us to build tourism better. And we have various committees, including sustainability. We have the Business of Tourism, which is our advocacy committee. And we have our new committee, which is a technology task force, which is chaired by Sanopit, with one of your own, as well as our people development committee, which is chaired by Paul. So we have a very strong presence of St. Lucia in the CHTA. And so I'd just like to give them a round of applause for their work. I must also mention Caroline, who is the chair of our educational foundation. So as I said, deep roots in CHTA. So the Caribbean region has been trying for a long time to achieve a unified approach to tourism. Now, more than ever, we need to look forward in terms of how we can build together coming out of the pandemic. In order to unlock the travel and tourism sector's recovery and ensure its long-term sustainability and growth, this will require serious capital investment from designing enabling environments for the sector to prosper, to considering new trends, diversification, new segments, and opportunities. Given the sector's ambition to build back better, we must consider what are the most attractive investment opportunities in the future to achieve a competitive, sustainable, and inclusive sector. And how can these be accelerated? How can the public-private sector prepare for that future and for those investments? I'm going to share with you a little bit of what the WTCC wrote on the Caribbean tourism performance and the outlook for the future, because I think it's important that we not look just at our own individual islands, but the Caribbean as a whole, because there are opportunities beyond our shores. The WTCC forecasted and points to 2 growth trajectories over the next decade for the industry. The baseline scenario forecasts an average annual growth GDP of 5.5%, more than double the overall economic growth of 2.4%. It shows that travel and tourism jobs are forecasted to grow at an average rate of 3.3% annually, creating more than 916,000 new jobs by 2032. That is major for the region. However, there is a potential for this to be significantly higher, and this is where we should give focus. The Caribbean's travel and tourism sector could outpace the current growth trajectory and achieve an annual rate of 6.7% to reach $96.6 billion in 2032, up from $50.5 billion in 2022. Meanwhile, travel and tourism jobs in the region could grow at an average of 4.5% annually, creating 1.34 million jobs by 2032. So if we look at it, this is how we have been performing within the Caribbean, and you can see we are clearly recovering from our 2019 performance. But of course, we see that 2022 has also been doing very well. When we look at St. Lucia and the economic impact report WTCC has put out, we can see a clear comparison between our 2019 and 2021 performance. And we know, based on everything I've heard this morning, 2022 sounds very, very good in terms of the potential to hit your 2019 numbers. But we have to look at a few factors which we have to focus on in order for this prospect that the WTCC and us here in the Caribbean are looking forward in terms of that explosive growth of tourism. And these areas include enhancing air connectivity by lowering costs, strengthening our inter-regional collaboration, investing in technology, as well as looking at our human capital development, offering diversified products and source markets, increasing our preparedness for future crises, and sustainability, which has been mentioned before. So if we look at a strong recovery in Caribbean air travel, it did continue through the summer, and it's pacing. The Caribbean is one of the destinations in the world that is recovering faster. We are like number 2. So you see from the January to June period, we were up by 2%. And total international inbound travelers in that same period was still down by 31%. So as a region, the Caribbean is coming back and recovering fast. And that stands something that we should all be proud of, and definitely you here in the room should be proud of your contribution to that. If we look at the most resilient countries within the Caribbean, based on worldwide international travelers, and this was reported out of June, you can see where some of us are lining up. This, of course, is improving. So when this was done, July was better than June, August was better than July, and so we continue to see improvement. My home country, down the bottom there, Jamaica, at 11%. We have actually now, in our July and August figures, surpassed our 2019 performance, which was a record year for us. But more work is to be done, and that's really what I want to focus on today. So the Caribbean, as I said, is leading the way in recovery, and that is something for small nation states, which we sometimes are called third world. We have shown the world that with collaboration, with partnership, with hard work, with the kind of spirit that Caribbean people have, we can pretty much do anything. And that's something I want us to take away, that even at the smallest, in Jamaica we say, "Little but you tolerable." I don't know if you have a similar saying in St. Lucia, but it just means that no matter your size, you can stand up to whatever is headwinds that are ahead of you. So we continue to see that our demand is growing for summer, and in fall, it's projecting an 18% increase over pre-pandemic levels. So again, good news. But I wanted to just touch a little bit on what we see still hindering some of the performance within the Caribbean. And I know that, yes, we must consider the fact that we are still in a pandemic, and yes, we are coming out of it, and we want to protect lives, but at the same time, we have to focus on livelihoods that will help us to protect lives. So we do have some areas that we need to consider in terms of how we move forward with adjusting restrictions. And I know your government is already looking at this, so we hope that we will see some movement in that trajectory, which will help. Because when we made the changes in Jamaica, I know it was controversial at the time, but we have seen really good results. And actually, from a MOH, Ministry of Health point of view, we have been good partners, and they have been happy that we haven't seen any major upticks. So I think we're at a point where we can unleash the true potential of our tourism product to help drive our economies forward. So we in the Caribbean have much to gain by working through our continuous performance and growth together. And I see here is the last line of a slide I'm going to give you as to where we are now, which is showing St. Lucia somewhere in the middle in terms of your recovery, the Caribbean overall a little bit below you, and you see some of the players that are really outperforming their 2019 performance and doing well to recover. Some are ahead of 2019 already. One of the areas that I think we as a region must focus on is this, the MASA. Everybody might be wondering what the MASA is, but it's the Multilateral Air Services Agreement, which was signed by members of CARICOM with the adoption of that by our 12 member states in 2018. And effective the 19th of May 2021, the MASA entered into force among 8 member states. The CARICOM Secretariat outlined in a recent report the importance of the MASA. It detailed that the CARICOM community represents a total of 14.8 million persons, and we are critically dependent on air services for inter-community travel. Increased air services on low-density routes will be one of the benefits, providing for increased access to member states, flexibility to routing. The development of regional air cargo operations, providing more options for exporters and importers, the manufacturers will like that. Enable development of low-cost, no-frill airlines and air transportation services, and enable technological development to enhance the delivery of air services through the creation of appropriate applications and programs for code sharing, alliances, and passenger check-in services. But those are some of the fond memories I have of St. Lucia. So we continue to advocate as a CHTA to raise our awareness of the Caribbean products within the region, our diversity. You know, we sometimes talk about one Caribbean, but also we like to use a phrase in Jamaica that says out of many one people, and that's what we are in the Caribbean. We're out of many, we're one, but we also are diversified. So we would like to, at this time, just let me move to my next thing, look at how we can continue to address this factor of interregional travel with continued collaboration, consistency in our entry requirements, investing in advertising for the region, production of taxes and fees, and just from a governmental point of view, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a loss of revenue, because all the studies that have been conducted have shown that with increased demand, we widen the net and the amount of travelers, we will make more money instead of trying to tax the few that can travel. We need to open up and expand so that more people will travel, not just for business. I mean, I came here, as I said, for my honeymoon. There are many persons throughout the Caribbean that would like to travel for various reasons besides business. And I think we have to give them the opportunity to do so. My bucket list is to be able to visit every island in the Caribbean before I, kick the bucket. And I'm halfway there. So I think that should be on every Caribbean national's bucket list, because we are such a fantastic set of people. There's so much culture, so much difference. We should celebrate and experience. So I want to move quickly because I know time we're behind, but I'm running through my presentation, at the issue of sustainability. With everything that is happening with shifting consumer dynamics, we have to look at new practices. So we know climate change is impacting us, sustainability and poor practices around waste, the high cost of renewables. We need to foster new business models and create opportunities to appeal to these changes. Consumers are going beyond sun, sea, and sand. They want to experience history, culture, culinary, nature, and we need to use new technologies to be able to get new business approaches as we look to build better and retro better. Through the CHTA's Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism, this dynamic was recognized. And in June, at the WCT Sustainable Summit in Puerto Rico, we launched the Caribbean's first tourism coral reef restoration and management guide. The research was undertaken in collaboration with the Nature Conservancy and UNEP. We also had just recently in June in Montego Bay the summit dealing with small and medium-sized tourism enterprises development, and how did they react during the pandemic, and how were they able to make it back through the pandemic. And we found some interesting things. John over here was on my panel with me at that summit. And it was really a great forum because it looked at something that, sometimes we don't recognize. Sometimes we look at the big players and see how they recover, and we lose focus on our small, medium, and micro players, who are actually the backbone of our tourism industry. If we go back in time, the people who started tourism in the Caribbean were really the small people, the players, the communities. And they now, in their success, attracted large international players who saw what we were doing in the Caribbean and said, hey, we can make some good money doing that also. And we shouldn't lose sight of that, because that is what is going to continue to propel the Caribbean forward and give our nationals an opportunity more for ownership and a path to be successful and build generational wealth, which is very critical. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of it, but just to point out that this summary and key findings here, as I said, is to recognize them as a critical part of the tourism product and to place them firmly on our policy agendas across the region, to look at training and development as well as stimulus, to engage them on a one-on-one basis and not talk to them, right, John? Talk with them. And then at the macro level, to continue looking at various incentives and programs to help them to go forward. Through our CHTA, through our Caribbean Sustainability Alliance, we have also signed the Glasgow Declaration, which I know many of you are looking at and possibly signatories to as well. The Caribbean is one of the most vulnerable areas in the world to climate change, and we believe we must be one of the world's most outspoken and strong advocates. So I'm really happy to see what is happening here with the conservation team. And part of that is, of course, to look at the blue economy. This is a tremendous opportunity for the region. Worldwide, coastal and marine-based industries is reported to contribute upwards of $2.5 trillion US dollars to the global economy. You heard what I said, right? Trillion, not billion. These activities create millions of jobs and generate myriads of benefits and services. We, however, need to see where we can jump in. And the blue economy provides sustainable and integrated use of coastal and marine living natural resources for economic growth and improved livelihood. When the young man mentioned about what you're doing in terms of the artificial reefs, at the summit in June in Puerto Rico, it was mentioned that now, using technology, they're now 3D printing coral and planting it in the oceans, because the rate at which the coral is disappearing, I think it's by 2030, they expect 95% of the coral in the world to disappear if we don't immediately arrest and find ways to save our coral reefs. Not as a big problem for Caribbean and for tourism and for the world. So this is not something we can spend time thinking about or talking about. This is the time for action. So the CHTA, I saw that you recently, through the Eastern Caribbean with the World Bank, has signed a global environment facility and the Pro-Blue Multi-Donor Trust Fund. So that is looking at unleashing the Blue Economy Caribbean project with a backing of $60 million US dollars. I know St. Lucia is very much in the forefront of that, with Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, with the project set to be completed in 2027. So kudos to St. Lucia for leading the charge. Tourism is the main driver of the economic region in the Eastern Caribbean, and it accounts for 50% of the regional GDP and 40% of employment. So the road to sustainability using the blue economy, as I mentioned, must include technology, but it must also include inclusiveness, not only bringing the large players to the table, but the thoughts and ideas of the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises within communities by providing access to finance, training, capacity building to drive innovation and engender product diversification. The region can continue to capitalize on its natural assets, providing food security, which is something that the world is focusing on now, potential for nutraceuticals, water-based activities for locals and visitors to enjoy, incorporating our visitors to the problem at hand through educational and conservation activities. Again, love the carbon offset plan that we are now doing here in St. Lucia. So those are things that are critical to go forward. I want to touch a little bit on technology. This is really a pet project of mine at the CHTA, and Sanovnik is my chair for the task force. And I think for the Caribbean region, we really have to double down on embedding technology into tourism. The rapid pace which technology is changing, is a key driver to our ability to market better our products and services, to be more sustainable, but also to be more efficient. We recently signed an MOU with the hospitality, finance, and technology professionals, and this year at our major trade show, the Caribbean Tourism Marketplace, which will be happening in Puerto Rico, for the first time, we will have a technology pavilion geared to showcasing the new and cutting-edge technology that is available to tourism. So this is both to drive profitability and to look at cost containment. The way we communicate, promote, and learn and train and remote work that we all had to do during COVID has been accelerated. And as Caribbean tourism leaders and organizations, we must understand and implement such new technologies. When we look at the use of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, metaverse, adopting these technologies and being able to put them into our tourism business to monitor their financial health in real time, save time, offer consumers new experiences, improve profitability, and enhance growth. I just want to share quickly, this is the task force main objectives, which I'm not going to go through in detail. But again, as I mentioned, focusing on working on embedding technology within the industry, again with a focus on our small and medium-sized tourism entities. And I'll share with you this quick one. China has a City Brain project which looked at how they could implement technology in tourism. For example, they have a one-click escort system that automatically controls the street lights. Maybe not such a problem here. I don't know what the traffic situation is like in St. Lucia, but in Jamaica it's a big problem. So these are things that make the experience smooth for the traveler. They have final vacancies within 10, where you can also enter the scenic spots within 20. So you have your app and you can look for these various experiences. They also use technology to analyze sentiment tendencies on text data, such as tourist reviews. So it does data mining by the hotels for health, location, service, price, facilities, and they organize everything based on that. So for a visitor, they can really assess what is happening. So as technology becomes more prevalent, of course, we have to look at the sustainability factors. And I'm just going to highlight two sections without going into it fully. Community tourism is something that we have to pay focus to and ensure that with the cost of technology, we don't leave behind our small and medium-sized players and, of course, our communities. We also have to look at the diversification, and I'm happy that we had that MOU signing this morning, but there are some other things which I'll touch on a little bit later on, particularly as it relates to linkages and manufacturing. We also asked our members in a recent survey on technology, what are some of the challenges that you are having with implementation? And one of the two challenges that were put was the access to broadband and the cost of broadband services. As an industry, Caribbean governments will have to put energy behind driving private sector's partners to improve and deliver on such services. We cannot be still in 2G or 3G. Broadband is essential to what the expectation of the new consumer. The days of having Wi-Fi of a privilege is gone. It is expected, but not only just having Wi-Fi, but the fastest possible Wi-Fi. People want to download, stream, the live streaming, every possible thing. And so it's important that we keep up with the technology. We also need to focus on our human capital development. COVID accelerated the use of standards, and when we worked with our various health authorities and agencies, including CARFO, we developed protocols and standards and trained nearly 10,000 industry owners, managers, and supervisors to reach our industry to recover from the challenges of the pandemic. The pandemic has also brought about worldwide change in our major markets. In the US, in the hospitality industry, as of May, their labor secretary reported they still have 1.3 million jobs lost. And their unemployment rate, is down to a low of, I think, 3.5%. Labor has changed how it relates to business, and we in tourism have to understand that as well. So we have to take into consideration these issues. In the survey of our members, labor shortages, escalating costs, and restrictive policies continue to present growing challenges to employers. 57% cite shortage of entry-level employees as a challenge. 60% report challenges in finding qualified supervisory or management level employees. 74% was challenged with escalating labor costs, and 69% cite challenges with restrictive government policies on wages and benefits. Workers will continue to seek more freedom, and they will also seek new benefits. And the way we interact with our workers will change. We have to look at part-time, we have to look at flexi hours, we have to look at different things which tourism probably was not planning to look at before. But it is something that we have to consider. We may be bringing back retirees into the workplace who would like a part-time job, but still want to contribute to tourism and to hospitality. We have some really talented people out there. The other thing that I think is important is the free movement of labor within the region. The establishment of the Treaty of Chaguaramas must be utilized more aggressively to promote access to labor across the region. While this exists between our territories, it is still not fully understood and or utilized by residents. We are still being faced by a level of recruitment from external partners, the USA, Canada, and the UK, and Jamaica was recently listed as the #2 Caribbean country in the world for brain drain. And we have 5 Caribbean destinations in the top 50. So we have talent here in the Caribbean that people want. We have to figure out how do we keep our brain power within the region. So how do we keep Caribbean talent within the Caribbean? The CHTA through its Caribbean Job Bank offers members the opportunity to list jobs for free and to access talent across the region. Paul, who is our People Development Committee Chair, is working to forge strategic partnerships with regional training institutions to ramp up programs geared to training entry-level positions, but also for more serious senior posts. In Jamaica, at the GHTA, we just are about to launch an apprenticeship program targeting unattached youth that are at risk, for a pathway for job and career development. In my ride over from the airport yesterday, I was speaking to my driver and he was saying there are a lot of young people who don't necessarily want to work, and it's really sometimes providing them that pathway. They themselves don't see how am I going to get a career out of this. And so that apprenticeship program or similar apprenticeship programs is a way to allow them to see a pathway, because tourism can give you phenomenal careers that pay significant sums of money in US dollars, right? And if you just understand the pathway, then you can get there. Caribbean tourism must continue to flourish and maintain its charm and what I'd like to call its secret sauce, which is not to lose the element of magic that is Caribbean people. And there's a lot of magic in this room, so let's not lose it. The CHTA has also launched a comprehensive membership program for young leaders, and I was very happy to witness what the SLHTA is doing with their young leadership program. I think we have 6 of our mentees from that program here from St. Lucia, and we continue to offer scholarships to our youth throughout the region. The last major area I want to touch on is diversification and inclusiveness. As we talked about earlier, collaboration and partnerships is essential to the success and growth of Caribbean tourism. We continue to work with public sector partners such as the organization, Caribbean Tourism Organization, CARFO, our national hotel associations, and various tourism boards. We work globally with partners like the WTCC and IATA, and strategic partners such as Forward Keys to provide real-time data on industry performance. Those partnerships, however, must go beyond tourism players in both the public and private sector, and a recognition and acceptance that tourism can truly drive the entire economy and provide values to industries as manufacturing, agriculture, but beyond that to the creative industries and more. When tourism shut down across the region, and I had experience within Jamaica, there were many naysayers who previously doubted the value of tourism to their country, and they quickly realized how wrong they were. Once you deepen linkages within tourism, you will see the benefits. We had developed a bond, I'll give you my example, with the Bankers Association, the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce, the Jamaica Manufacturers Association, and the CHTA. We had a tourism recovery task force that met sometimes daily, many times on the weekends into the dead of night, and so we did also meet at CHTA many times. We met with our Minister of Finance and Planning, our Minister of Tourism, etc. And we looked at the headwinds, but we now have a quarterly meeting where not only does tourism, but every industry sits down with the Bank of Jamaica and discusses where we are, what the forecast looks like, what the headwinds are. They report on their industry. So private sector and government sit down once a quarter and basically spill our guts as to what is happening. And this is something that has been a game changer for tourism in Jamaica. And of course, something that I think, if not done already here, should be implemented. It really allows other industries to understand what is happening in tourism, but most importantly, for tourism to understand the other industries, because sometimes it's a one-way street. And tourism says, nobody understands us, but we also need to understand the other industries and how we can work towards being a better driver for the economy. Through our Tourism Linkages Council, we added also gastronomy, sports and entertainment, health and wellness, knowledge and shopping. And so I think those are areas that we can continue to grow and develop. Increasing linkages and reducing leakages as a region is paramount. With the current worldwide discussion around food security, particular emphasis on agricultural sector is critical. The tourism industry in the region in 2019 provided 32 million international arrivals. That's twice the population of CARICOM to feed and provide goods and services. What this allows us as a region and as individual companies is to develop economies of scale. That is critical for our success. We cannot look at what we do as the number of residents in our own islands. We have to look at the potential of the Caribbean and what that means, not only in terms of the residents, but also the international visitors that are coming in. It gives us an opportunity to look at export, to have an export market literally of 32 million, experience your product and services without having to spend a cent to market to them. And that is something that tourism provides to the region. Inclusiveness is something that I would like to just mention. The accommodation sector in the region has long been seen as the main driver, right? But there are destinations such as Orlando that has used their attraction sector as the main driver. When Disney decided to place its attraction in Orlando, it actually drove the development of the accommodation sector. We in the region tend to focus a lot on the accommodation sector and don't remember the other elements that can also drive tourism. So we need to understand the full potential and ensure that we engender policies and incentive schemes that gives benefits not only to the accommodation sector, but to the attractions, tourism, transportation, and small players in these sectors should also receive these benefits. In Jamaica, we had to change from the HIA Act, which was the Hotel Incentive Act, to the Omnibus Incentive. That happened in 2014 when I was president. The fiscal incentive legislation would not only govern tourism, but all industries. When this move was put forward, it was not a welcome one initially, because of course we didn't want to let go of what we knew, the tried and true. But what has happened since that implementation is that we now have an incentive legislation that has no expiration date. Once you are a registered licensed tourism entity, you can benefit for the incentive in perpetuity. This has allowed something that the small and medium-sized players in the industry truly benefited from, because oftentimes when you have to reapply for an incentive, you have to state a case and it requires financial plans and so on and so forth. But this allowed the sector to open up and really saw a growth in attractions as well as small and medium-sized entities. this was really a game changer and something for St. Lucia to consider, Mr. Prime Minister. We can talk further afterwards. I just want to also share that the sharing economy is something that has really opened up the region to what I would say is an ownership class that is coming back against in tourism. This has allowed many ordinary citizens to become an accommodation provider. And I want us to look to see how we can work in a more regulated and seamless manner to ensure their growth. Some territories, such as the USVI and Puerto Rico, has taken steps to formalize the sector. And I know St. Lucia now has the Collection de Vérité, did I pronounce that correct? And that is definitely a move in the right direction. For me, expanding the ownership class in the region is critical to the success and continued growth and development of Caribbean tourism. It's important that people in communities recognize that they too can be an owner of business in tourism, not just a worker. Sometimes we look at it and say we need to employ persons in tourism, but we also need to unleash the entrepreneurial potential of our people. And that young man, if he's still here, is one of those that we are unleashing his potential. There is a lot of young and continue to grow that. Digitization and technology, which we must continue to push. Sustainability and our environmental focus, as well as strengthening our small tourism enterprises. To me, that is the key. If we can do that right, yes, John, clap away. If we can do that right, and say it again, you know, in the US, they always say that the US economy is driven by who? Small businesses. I don't know why we don't recognize that in the Caribbean. The Caribbean economy is driven by small business, and we need more of them, a lot more of them, right? So we have to focus on that. Small businesses becomes medium-sized, becomes large. And in the scheme of things, most businesses in the Caribbean are still considered small on the world stage. So we have to recognize that that must be our focus, both from a private sector point of view and from a government regional point of view. And again, closing, collaboration is key to our success. Now is not the time to sit back and think that all will fall into place. While recovery so far has been considered robust, we are still digging ourselves out of 2 years of literally no income. And industry can continue to grow, both directly and indirectly, and contribute to economic performance. But we must not go back to past decisions that as soon as tourism starts to perform, we decide to tax it. We just need to widen and deepen our linkages so that there is more dollars coming into the government coffers through ensuring that we are growing tourism to the next level, right? So we want to focus on that and ensure that we increase our tax revenue, because we know we have to do that, Mr. Prime Minister. We're not running away from the responsibility, but how we do it across the region is important, because we want to be able to grow at another level. So we must also inspire our youth to look at tourism-related services in technology, such as web design, booking engines, virtual reality, service apps, digital marketing, to realize that tourism is not just about the hotel and attraction, but opens up every product to the export market for our sauces, our spices, our rums, our bags, our clothing, and other items that 32 million tourists that I told you about, and the potential that the WTCC said about our doubling our arrival numbers is there for us to take advantage of. So we must continue to use the level of collaboration that was forged in the fire of the pandemic to drive innovation, knowledge sharing, and diversification into new markets. We must use technology and develop our Caribbean talent to meet the needs of the new breed of traveler while maintaining the charm and authenticity for which the Caribbean is known. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.